The gym coach blew his whistle and shouted, "Who drives a black sedan to school?" Coach Dalton's whistle cut through the gymnasium like a knife. The sound bounced off the walls and ceiling, sharp enough to make my ears ring. He was standing in the center of the basketball court, red-faced and sweating, despite the fact that we hadn't started warm-ups yet. His hand was wrapped around that silver whistle so tight his knuckles had gone white. The entire junior class gym period froze. 32 students mid-conversation, mid-laugh, mid-whatever we'd been doing in those casual seconds before class officially started. Coach Dalton never yelled like this. He was the laid-back coach, the one who let us listen to music during workouts, the one who made jokes about his own dad bod while demonstrating proper form. But right now, he looked like he was about to have a stroke. His face was the color of a fire engine, and there was a vein pulsing in his temple that I'd never noticed before. I said, "Who drives a black sedan to school? I need an answer right now." My stomach dropped. I drove a black sedan, a 2015 Nissan Altima that had been my mom's before she'd upgraded last year and passed it down to me. It was basic, reliable, and yes, black. But so were probably a dozen other cars in the student parking lot. Black sedans weren't exactly rare. I looked around at the other students, trying to gauge if anyone else was going to raise their hand. Nobody moved. Everyone was staring at Coach Dalton like he'd lost his mind. My best friend Noah was standing next to me, and I felt him glance over, but I kept my eyes forward. Something about the way Coach was asking made me hesitate. This wasn't a casual question. This was an accusation wrapped in a question, and every instinct I had was screaming at me to stay quiet until I knew what this was about. Coach Dalton scanned the group, his eyes moving from face to face. When they landed on me, they stopped. Just for a second, but long. Enough that I felt it like a physical weight. Then he kept moving, kept scanning. Nobody? Nobody wants to claim their vehicle? His voice was shaking now, either from anger or something else I couldn't identify. Fine. Everyone to the bleachers. Nobody leaves until someone answers me. We moved as a group toward the bleachers, that shuffling mass movement of teenagers who didn't want to be the first or last to comply. I sat down between Noah and a girl named Tessa from my English class. My hands were sweating. I wiped them on my gym shorts and tried to look casual, but my heart was hammering against my ribs. What had happened? Why was Coach Dalton asking about black sedans specifically? Noah leaned over and whispered, "Dude, you drive a black car, right?" I nodded, barely. "So do like 5 other people in this class," I whispered back. "Why is he freaking out?" Noah shrugged, but his expression was worried. "No idea, but this is weird, like really weird." Coach Dalton paced back, and forth in front of us, that whistle still dangling from his fingers. He pulled out his phone, looked at it, then put it away. Then he pulled it out again. He was agitated in a way that went beyond normal teacher frustration. This was personal. "All right," he finally said, his voice slightly calmer, but still trembling. "Let me be more specific. I'm looking for a black 4-door sedan, newer model, with a dent in the rear bumper on the passenger side. Does that narrow it down for anyone?" My blood turned to ice. My car had a dent in the rear bumper on the passenger side. I'd backed into a concrete pole in a parking garage 3 months ago, and I still hadn't gotten it fixed because the repair estimate was $800 and I was saving for college. The dent was small but visible if you knew to look for it. I felt Noah's eyes on me again, and this time I couldn't help but glance back. He knew about the dent. He'd been with me when it happened, had made fun of me for weeks about my parking skills. His expression now was carefully neutral, but I could see the question in his eyes. I shook my head slightly, a tiny movement that I hoped only he could see. I wasn't raising my hand. Not yet. Not until I knew what this was about. Coach Dalton was staring at us now with an intensity that made me want to sink through the bleachers into the floor below. "Look, I'm going to be straight with you. Something serious happened in the parking lot last night. The police are involved. If you drive a car matching that description, you need to come forward now before this gets worse. Because trust me, it's going to get worse." Police. The word sent a jolt through my entire body. What could have happened in the parking lot that involved the police and my car, specifically? I hadn't been at school last night. I'd been home doing homework and watching Netflix with my little sister. I hadn't driven anywhere except to school yesterday morning and back home at 3:15 p.m. when the final bell rang. My car had been in my driveway all night, I was sure of it. I'd seen it there when I'd taken out the trash before bed, but Coach's words echoed in my head. Before this gets worse. How could it get worse if I hadn't done anything wrong? A hand went up. I turned to see Jeremy Paulson, a quiet kid who usually kept to himself, standing up from the bleachers 3 rows behind me. "I drive a black sedan," he said. His voice was steady, but I could see his hands shaking. 2018 Toyota Camry. No dent, though. Coach Dalton walked over to him. "Where was your car last night between 7 and 10 p.m.? Jeremy blinked. "At home. I was home all night." "Why?" Coach didn't answer the question. "Anyone else? Anyone else drive a black sedan, any make or model?" Another hand went up, then another. By the time everyone had finished, 5 students had identified themselves as black sedan drivers, including Jeremy. but none of them had mentioned a dent, which meant I was the only one who fit the specific description Coach had given. My entire body felt cold despite the stuffy heat of the gymnasium. Coach Dalton looked at the 5 students who'd raised their hands. "All of you, come with me. The rest of you, free period in here. Don't leave the gym." He didn't wait for a response, just turned and walked toward his office at the far end of the gym. The 5 students followed, casting confused and nervous glances at each other. I watched them go, my mind racing. Should I have raised my hand? Should I go after Coach now and tell him about my car? But something held me back, some survival instinct that said once I identified myself, everything would change. The remaining students erupted into chaos. The second coach's office door closed. Everyone was talking at once, theorizing about what had happened. "I heard someone got hit by a car in the parking lot," said a girl named Madison. "Like, seriously injured." "No way," countered someone else. "I heard it was vandalism. Someone spray-painted the school building." Noah grabbed my arm. "Dude, you need to tell him about your car." I pulled away. "Not until I know what happened. What if someone used my car? What if it was stolen? Was it stolen?" Noah's eyes were wide. "Did you check this morning?" I thought back to this morning. I'd driven to school same as always, parked in my usual spot in the south lot, grabbed my backpack, and headed inside. The car had been fine. No damage, no signs of anything wrong. "It was fine this morning," I said. "Normal." "Then you need to tell Coach. If you wait and they find out anyway, it's going to look bad, like you were hiding something." He was right. I knew he was right. But my feet wouldn't move. The office door opened and Jeremy came out. His face was pale and he looked like he might throw up. He walked quickly to the bleachers and sat down, pulling out his phone with shaking hands. I wanted to ask him what had happened in there, what questions Coach had asked, but something about his expression made me keep my distance. One by one, the other 4 students emerged from the office. All of them looked shaken. All of them immediately pulled out their phones. 20 minutes into our supposed free period, Principal Winters walked into the gymnasium. She was a short woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and a reputation for being fair but strict. Behind her were 2 police officers in uniform. My heart stopped. "Attention, students," Principal Winters said, her voice carrying across the gym without needing a microphone. "We need everyone to remain in the gymnasium for the time being. The police need to ask some questions related to an incident that occurred on school property last night. Please cooperate fully." The 2 officers split up, one heading toward Coach Dalton's office, the other positioning himself near the gym doors like he was guarding them. We were being held here. Actually held. This wasn't just about a car anymore. This was serious. Noah leaned over. "You're running out of time, to be honest," he whispered. "Once they start checking registration records and matching license plates to surveillance footage, they're going to know it's your car. You need to get ahead of this." I stood up before I could change my mind. My legs felt disconnected from my body as I walked down the bleachers and across the gym floor toward where Principal Winters was standing with the officer by the door. She saw me coming, and her expression shifted to something I couldn't quite read. Concern? Suspicion? I couldn't tell. "Principal Winters," I said, my voice coming out rougher than I intended. "I drive a black sedan, 2015 Nissan Altima. It has a dent in the rear passenger side bumper." The officer's hand moved to the notepad in his shirt pocket. He was young, maybe late 20s, with a name tag that read, Officer K. Stevens. He pulled out the notepad and clicked his pen. "Name? Ethan Burke, Jr. My car is parked in the South Lot, space B17. Officer Stevens wrote everything down. "And where was your vehicle last night between the hours of 7 and 10 p.m.? "At home, in my driveway. I didn't go anywhere after I got home from school." "Can anyone verify that?" I thought about it. "My mom, my little sister. They were home with me all night. We had dinner together at 6:30, then I was in my room doing homework." "What time did you go to bed?" "Around 11. I watched TV for a while after I finished my calc homework." Officer Stevens finished writing and looked up at me. "Mr. Burke, I need you to come with me. We have some questions, and we'd like to take a look at your vehicle." We walked out of the gym, through the empty hallways of the school. Classes were in session, so it was just us and the sound of our footsteps echoing off the lockers. Principal Winters walked ahead with the officer, and I followed a few steps behind, feeling like a prisoner even though no one had handcuffed me or even touched me. We went out the front entrance and across the parking lot to where my car sat in its usual spot. In the daylight, the dent in the bumper was obvious. Officer Stevens circled the vehicle slowly, taking photos with his phone of every angle. He paused at the front bumper and crouched down, examining something I couldn't see. "Mr. Burke, can you unlock your vehicle, please?" I pulled out my keys with shaking hands and clicked the unlock button. The lights flashed, and the locks clicked open. Officer Stevens opened the driver's side door and leaned in, looking around the interior without touching anything. Then he straightened up and pulled out his radio. "This is Stevens. I need a forensics team at North Point High School, South Parking Lot. Possible vehicle match in the Harrison incident." Harrison incident. The name meant nothing to me, but the word forensics sent a spike of pure terror through my chest. "What's the Harrison incident?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Principal Mas? Winters touched my arm gently. Ethan, why don't you come back inside with me? The officers will need to process your vehicle and we should call your parents. We walked back into the school and to Principal Winters' office. She gestured for me to sit in one of the chairs across from her desk while she sat down behind it. Ethan, I need you to be completely honest with me. Did you leave school property at any time yesterday after final bell? No, ma'am. I drove straight home. And you stayed home all evening? Yes, until this morning when I drove back to school. She nodded slowly. I'm going to call your parents now. You're not in trouble yet, but we need to figure out what happened, and you're going to need your family here. She picked up her office phone and dialed. I gave her my mom's cell number and listened as she explained the situation in careful, measured tones. My mom's voice on the other end was sharp with worry, even though I could only hear Principal Winters' side of the conversation. Yes, Mrs. Burke, as soon as possible. Thank you. She hung up and looked at me. Your mother is on her way. She works downtown, so it'll be about 20 minutes. In the meantime, I want you to stay here with me. Is there anything you want to tell me? Anything that might help explain how your car came to be involved in this situation? I don't even know what situation it's involved in, I said, and I heard the frustration in my own voice. Nobody will tell me what happened. What's the Harrison incident? Principal Winters hesitated, then sighed. A teacher was assaulted last night in the faculty parking lot. Ms. Diana Harrison, the chemistry teacher. Someone hit her with a vehicle, then fled the scene. She's in the hospital with serious injuries. The room tilted. Ms. Harrison. I knew her, not well, but I'd had her for chemistry sophomore year. She was young, maybe 30, and had a reputation for being tough, but fair. Someone had hit her with a car. With my car. I didn't do that, I said, and my voice sounded strange in my own ears. I swear I didn't do that. I wasn't here. I was home. I believe you, Ethan, but we need to figure out how your car was involved if you weren't driving it. Stolen. That was the only explanation. Someone had stolen my car last night, used it to hit Miss Harrison, then returned it to my driveway before I woke up. But that seemed impossible. Wouldn't I have noticed the car was missing? Wouldn't my mom have seen something? Is there any damage to your car? Principal Winters asked. Any new dents or scratches besides the one you mentioned? I thought about the car as I'd seen it this morning. It had looked normal. The same dent in the back, no new damage that I'd noticed. But I hadn't exactly been looking for damage. I'd just gotten in and driven to school like any other day. I don't think so, but I didn't really check. The police will check thoroughly. They'll be able to tell if your car was involved in the, collision. A knock on the door interrupted us. Officer Stevens came in, followed by another officer, this one older with graying hair and sergeant stripes on his uniform. Ms. Winters, Ethan Burke, this is Sergeant Alan Matthews. He's heading up the investigation into the assault on Ms. Harrison. Sergeant Matthews sat down in the chair next to me. He had the kind of face that had seen too much, lined and weathered, but with sharp, intelligent eyes that missed nothing. Son, I'm going to be direct with you. We have video footage from the school security cameras showing a black Nissan Altima with a dent in the rear passenger bumper entering the faculty parking lot at 8:15 p.m. last night. The camera caught the license plate. It's registered to a Margaret Burke at 4821 Elmwood Drive. That's your car, correct? My mouth was dry. That's my mom's address. The car used to be hers. She gave it to me last year. And where were you at 8:15 p.m. last night? Home, at 4821 Elmwood Drive, with my mom and sister. Can you prove that? I thought frantically. My phone. Check my phone location history. I have it set to always share location with my mom. She's paranoid about knowing where I am. Sergeant Matthews nodded to Officer Stevens, who held out his hand. Phone, please. I unlocked it and handed it over. Officer Stevens tapped through screens while Sergeant Matthews continued. Even if your phone was at home, that doesn't prove you were with it. You could have left it there while you drove to school. But I didn't. I swear I didn't. My voice was rising and I forced myself to take a breath. Someone must have stolen my car. Or maybe it wasn't my car. Maybe it was a different black Altima with a similar dent. Sergeant Matthews pulled out a tablet and turned it toward me. On the screen was a grainy but clear security camera image of my car entering the faculty parking lot. The license plate was visible. That was definitely my car. That's impossible, I whispered. I was home. The door burst open and my mom rushed in, her work bag still slung over her shoulder, her face pale with panic. Ethan, what's going on? They said you were involved in an assault? She looked at Sergeant Matthews. I'm Margaret Burke, Ethan's mother. What is this about? Sergeant Matthews stood and introduced himself, explaining the situation calmly and professionally. I watched my mom's face cycle through disbelief, horror, and anger. When he finished, she turned to me. Were you home last night? Yes, Mom, the entire night. You know I was. And the car never left the driveway? No, I don't think so. I realized how weak that sounded. I didn't take it anywhere. I was in my room. You saw me. My mom turned to Sergeant Matthews. I can confirm Ethan was home last night. He came home from school around 3:30. We had dinner at 6:30, and he was in his room studying after that. I checked on him around 9 when I went to bed. He was at his desk doing homework. Did you hear the car start at any point? Did you see it leave the driveway? My mom hesitated. No, but I wouldn't necessarily have heard it. Our driveway is on the side of the house away from the bedrooms, and I was watching TV in the living room for most of the evening. Sergeant Matthews wrote everything down. Mrs. Burke, do you have a spare key to the vehicle? Of course. It's on my keychain at home. Why? We need to determine if someone else could have accessed the vehicle. Where do you keep your keys? On a hook by the front door, inside the house. And was your house locked last night? My mom's expression shifted to understanding and then horror. We sometimes forget to lock the side door, the one that leads from the garage into the house, but nobody would just walk into our house. Officer Stevens looked up from my phone. Sir, location services show his phone was at the Elmwood address from 3:47 p.m. yesterday until 7:22 a.m. this morning. Didn't move. Sergeant Matthews nodded slowly. All right, that supports your story about being home, but it doesn't explain how your car was at this school at 8:15 p.m. He stood up. We're going to impound the vehicle and go over it thoroughly. We'll check for fingerprints, DNA, any evidence that someone other than Ethan was driving it. In the meantime, Ethan, you're not under arrest, but you're a person of interest in this investigation. Don't leave town. My mom grabbed my hand. He's 17. He's a minor. If you want to question him further, I want a lawyer present. That's your right, Mrs. Burke. But right now, we're just gathering information. If this becomes a formal interrogation, we'll make sure you have legal representation. Sergeant Matthews handed my mom a business card. Call me if you remember anything else. Any detail, no matter how small, could be important. They left, and I sat there in Principal Winter's office with my mom's hand squeezing mine so tight it hurt. I didn't do this, I said to her. I promise I didn't do this. I know, honey. I know. We'll figure this out. But I could hear the doubt in her voice. Not doubt that I would hurt someone, but doubt that we could prove I hadn't. The evidence was right there on that security footage. My car. My license plate. How could we fight that? Principal Winters cleared her throat. I think it's best if Ethan goes home for the day. This is obviously very stressful, and he's not going to be able to focus on classes. We'll mark it as an excused absence. My mom nodded and stood up, pulling me with her. We walked out of the office and through the hallways, and I was acutely aware of the stares from students and teachers alike. Word had spread. Everyone knew something had happened. Everyone was looking at me. We got to the front entrance, and my mom stopped. How are we getting home? They have your car. Right. My car was being impounded. I'll call an Uber, my mom said, pulling out her phone. We stood outside on the front steps of the school waiting, and I felt completely exposed, like everyone driving by could see guilt written all over me. The Uber arrived, and we climbed into the back seat. The driver tried to make small talk, but gave up after receiving one-word answers. When we got home, my mom paid the driver, and we went inside. My little sister Chloe was at the kitchen table doing homework. She was in 8th grade and had an early dismissal day. She looked up as we came in. Why are you guys home? It's only 11:30. My mom looked at me, then at Chloe. Chloe, honey, did you see or hear anything unusual last night? Anything with Ethan's car? Chloe frowned. Like what? Like someone starting it or moving it? No. Chloe looked between us, her expression shifting to concern. Why? What happened? Nothing, I said quickly. Just some mix-up at school. But Chloe wasn't stupid. Did something happen to your car? My mom sat down at the table. There was an incident at school last night. Someone was hurt. The police think Ethan's car might have been involved. Chloe's eyes went wide. But Ethan was home. He was here all night. I saw him. You saw me? I asked. When? When I went to use the bathroom around 8. Your door was open and you were at your desk. You had your headphones on and you were typing something. A small spark of hope lit in my chest. You're sure it was around 8? Yeah, I remember because I was watching that baking show and it was during the judging segment, which is always at the end. The episode ended at 8, so it had to be like 8:05 or something. Sergeant Matthews had said the car was seen entering the school at 8:15. If Chloe had seen me at home at 8:05, there was no way I could have driven to school by 8:15. The school was at least 20 minutes away, more with traffic. My mom pulled out Sergeant Matthews's business card and called him. She explained what Chloe had just said, her voice urgent. I couldn't hear his response, but my mom's expression fell. I see. Yes, I understand. Thank you. She hung up and looked at me. He says witness testimony from family members is helpful, but not conclusive. The defense would argue that you're covering for each other. He still needs physical evidence. The doorbell rang. My mom answered it to find 2 officers standing on our porch. Not Sergeant Matthews or Officer Stevens, but 2 different officers. Mrs. Burke, we have a warrant to search your home and vehicles. We're looking for any evidence related to the assault on Diana Harrison. They handed my mom a paper. She read it quickly, her hands shaking, then stepped aside. Of course. Whatever you need. We watched as the officers went through our house systematically. They photographed the hook by the door where my mom kept her keys. They checked all the doors and windows, testing locks. They went through the garage, looking at tools, checking for damage or debris. They took my computer from my room, my phone, charger, notebooks, anything that might contain evidence. One officer came to me with a small kit. I need to take your fingerprints and a DNA sample, for elimination purposes. I looked at my mom, who nodded reluctantly. I let him press my fingers onto the ink pad and then onto the card, let him swab the inside of my cheek, let them process me like a criminal, even though I hadn't done anything wrong. The search took 2 hours. When they finally left, our house looked like it had been ransacked. My mom sat down on the couch and put her face in her hands. I need to call a lawyer. We need professional help with this. She called our family lawyer, a man named Gerald Whitmore, who handled our wills and contracts. He listened to the situation, asked a few questions, then told my mom he didn't handle criminal defense, but would refer us to someone who did. An hour later, we had an appointment with a criminal defense attorney named Patricia Yun for the next morning. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, going over everything in my mind. Someone had taken my car. That was the only explanation that made sense. Someone had come into our house, taken my mom's spare key, driven my car to school, hit Ms. Harrison, and then returned the car to our driveway. But who and why? Why frame me? The next morning, we met with Patricia Yun at her office downtown. She was in her mid-40s, sharply dressed in a gray suit, with intelligent eyes that reminded me of Sergeant Matthews. She listened to our story without interrupting, taking notes on a legal pad. When we finished, she sat back in her chair. Ethan, I'm going to ask you this once, and I need complete honesty. Did you have any involvement in what happened to Ms. Harrison? No, absolutely not. She studied my face for a long moment, then nodded. All right, here's where we are. The evidence against you is circumstantial but damaging. Your car was positively identified at the scene. Your access to that car, combined with no solid alibi, makes you the primary suspect. However, the fact that someone else could have accessed your vehicle creates reasonable doubt. She flipped through her notes. We need to establish a few things. First, who else knew where your mother kept her car keys? Second, who would have a motive to hurt Ms. Harrison? Third, can we find any physical evidence that someone else was in that car? The police forensics team will be looking, but we need our own investigation. Patricia Yun pulled out a contract. My retainer is $5,000. If this goes to trial, costs will increase significantly. Do you want to proceed? My mom didn't hesitate. Yes, whatever it takes. Over the next 3 days, our lives became a nightmare. The story hit the local news. High school teacher struck by vehicle in school parking lot, student questioned. My name wasn't released because I was a minor, but at school, everyone knew. I walked through the hallways and felt the stares, heard the whispers. Former friends avoided me. Teachers looked at me with suspicion. Only Noah stood by me, sitting with me at lunch when everyone else had found excuses to sit elsewhere. This is insane, Noah said on the 3rd day. Everyone thinks you did it. I know. We need to figure out who actually did it. Who has access to your house? I'd been thinking about that constantly. Anyone could have access. We don't always lock the side door. Our neighborhood is pretty safe, or at least we thought it was. People walk through yards all the time. Someone could have just walked in. But they'd have to know where your mom keeps her keys, and they'd have to know your car matches the description they needed. This wasn't random, Ethan. Someone planned this. Someone wanted to hurt Ms. Harrison and wanted to frame you for it. That thought had occurred to me too. This was personal, but I couldn't figure out why anyone would want to frame me specifically. I was nobody. Average grades, average social life, no enemies that I knew of. Patricia Yun called that afternoon with news. The forensics report came back on your car. They found 2 sets of fingerprints. Yours, which is expected, and another set that doesn't match anyone in the database. They also found a hair that doesn't match your DNA. That's good for us. It proves someone else was in your car. My mom put the call on speaker. Does that clear Ethan? Not entirely. The prosecution could argue the fingerprints and hair were left there before the incident. But it helps. It establishes that other people have been in the vehicle. Patricia paused. There's something else. Ms. Harrison regained consciousness yesterday. The police interviewed her. She says she saw the driver of the vehicle that hit her. My heart stopped. Did she identify them? She said it was too dark to see clearly. But she said the driver appeared to be male, average build, wearing a dark hoodie. That matches your general description. Unfortunately. But it also matches thousands of other people. Did she say anything else? My mom asked. She said the car came at her deliberately. This wasn't an accident. Someone aimed for her and accelerated. She was able to jump out of the way partially, which is why she wasn't killed. But her leg was badly broken and she has internal injuries. Whoever did this meant to hurt her, possibly kill her. The words hung in the air. Attempted murder. That's what this was. and I was the prime suspect. That evening, I decided to do what the police hadn't seemed interested in doing. I needed to figure out who had a motive to hurt Ms. Harrison. I pulled out my laptop, the old one I used before they'd confiscated my main computer, and started searching. Diana Harrison's social media was mostly private, but her Facebook page was public. I scrolled through her posts, pictures of her cat, shares of chemistry jokes, occasional photos from what looked like hiking trips. Nothing controversial, nothing that would suggest why someone would want to hurt her. I expanded my search. I looked up news articles about the school, about teachers, about anything that might give me a clue. Nothing. Then I remembered something. Earlier this year, there had been a scandal involving a teacher and a student. Not at our school, but at a school in a nearby district. The teacher had been arrested for an inappropriate relationship. It had been all over the news for weeks. What if something similar was happening here? What if Miss Harrison knew something about another teacher? What if she was a threat to someone? I started thinking about the teachers at our school, trying to remember if I'd noticed anything unusual. And then it hit me. Coach Dalton. Coach Dalton had been the one asking about the black sedan in the first place. Why had he known to ask? Why had he been so agitated that morning? I texted Noah. Do you remember anything weird about Coach Dalton this year? Any rumors about him? Noah responded immediately. Why? You think Coach is involved? I don't know. Just trying to figure out who knew to ask about black sedans. How did Coach know? Good point. Let me ask around. An hour later, Noah called me. Dude, I talked to some people on the basketball team. They said Coach has been super weird lately. Stressed out, angry all the time. One guy said he saw Coach arguing with Ms. Harrison in the parking lot a few weeks ago. Like, seriously arguing. He couldn't hear what they were saying, but it looked intense. My pulse quickened. Coach Dalton and Ms. Harrison were arguing? That's what I heard. Could be nothing. Could be something. I called Patricia Yun immediately and told her what Noah had learned. She was quiet for a moment. That's interesting. I'll reach out to the police and see if they've interviewed Coach Dalton as part of their investigation. If he had a conflict with the victim, he should definitely be looked at. But when Patricia called back the next day, she sounded frustrated. The police said they interviewed Coach Dalton briefly. He told them he asked about the black sedan because he'd been notified by Principal Winters to help identify vehicles matching that description. According to their report, he's not a suspect. But what about his argument with Ms. Harrison? They didn't seem to think it was relevant. Teachers argue sometimes. It doesn't make him an attempted murderer. She paused. Ethan, the DA's office called me. They're planning to charge you, probably by the end of the week. The world tilted. They're going to arrest me? Most likely. We'll arrange for you to turn yourself in with me present. It'll be better than them showing up at your house or school. We'll go through booking, I'll argue for bail, and we'll go from there. But I didn't do anything. My voice cracked. I know, and we're going to prove that. But right now, the evidence points to you, and the DA has enough for charges. We need to build our defense. After the call ended, I sat on my bed feeling completely hollow. This was really happening. I was going to be arrested for something I didn't do. My mom came into my room an hour later. Her eyes were red from crying. Patricia called me. She told me about the charges. I nodded, not trusting my voice. I know you didn't do this, my mom said fiercely. I know my son. We're going to fight this with everything we have. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about Coach Dalton. The argument with Ms. Harrison, his strange behavior that morning in the gym, the way he'd been so specifically asking about a black sedan with a dent. What if he hadn't been asked by Principal Winters? What if he'd known about the black sedan because he'd been looking for it? Because he'd used it? But why would Coach Dalton frame me? I'd never even had him as a teacher. I was just another student in his gym class. There was no connection between us unless I wasn't the target. What if the point wasn't to frame me specifically, but just to frame someone? Anyone who drove a car matching that description? The next morning, I told my mom I needed to go to school early. She was hesitant, worried about how other students would treat me, but I convinced her. I needed to see Coach Dalton. Needed to look him in the eye and see if my suspicions were real or if I was just desperate to blame someone else. I got to school at 7 a.m. before most students arrived. I went straight to the gym. Coach Dalton was in his office with the door open going through papers on his desk. I knocked on the doorframe. He looked up and his expression shifted when he saw me. Surprise, then something else. Wariness? Ethan, what are you doing here so early? I wanted to ask you something, Coach. I stepped into the office. Why did you ask about the black sedan that morning? Who told you to look for it? Coach Dalton's jaw tightened. Principal Winters asked all staff to help identify vehicles that might have been involved in the incident. That's all. But you were really specific. You mentioned the dent in the rear bumper. How did you know about that? The security footage showed it. Did it? Because I never saw the footage. The police showed me a still image, but you couldn't see the dent in that image. It was too grainy. So how did you know about the dent? Coach Dalton stood up. I don't like what you're implying, Ethan. I was doing my job. If you have questions about the investigation, take them to the police. Now get out of my office. I didn't move. What were you arguing with Ms. Harrison about? His face flushed red. That's none of your business. It is, if it's connected to what happened to her. People saw you fighting with her in the parking lot. What was it about? Get out, now, before I have you removed. I left his office, but the feeling in my gut told me I was right. Coach Dalton knew something. I pulled out my phone and called Patricia Yun, leaving a voicemail about my conversation with Coach. Then I called Sergeant Matthews. He answered on the third ring. Sergeant, this is Ethan Burke. I need to tell you something about Coach Dalton. I think he might be involved in what happened to Ms. Harrison. Son, we've already cleared Coach Dalton. He has an alibi for the time of the incident. What's his alibi? I can't share details of an ongoing investigation with you. But did you know he argued with Ms. Harrison a few weeks before she was hit? Did you look into that? There was a pause. What argument? In the parking lot. Multiple people saw it, basketball team members. They said it was heated, like a real fight. Sergeant Matthews was quiet for a long moment. All right, I'll look into it. But Ethan, you need to be careful. Pointing fingers at other people when you're the primary suspect doesn't look good. It looks desperate. I am desperate. I'm about to be arrested for something I didn't do. Someone else drove my car that night. Someone who had access to my house and my car. Someone who knew exactly what they were doing. If that's true, we'll find evidence of it. But right now, all the evidence points to you. I went to class in a daze. First period calculus was torture. I couldn't focus on anything the teacher was saying. My mind was racing, trying to piece together what had happened. If Coach Dalton had hit Ms. Harrison, he would have needed access to my car. How would he have gotten that? Did he know where I lived? Had he followed me home at some point? At lunch, Noah found me sitting alone in the corner of the cafeteria. Dude, everyone's saying you're getting arrested. Probably by the end of the week. This is so messed up. Noah sat down across from me. I've been digging around like you asked, talking to people about Coach and Ms. Harrison. I found out something interesting. He pulled out his phone and showed me a screenshot of an old Facebook post. It was from 3 years ago from Ms. Harrison's page. The photo showed her at what looked like a party, standing next to a man I didn't recognize. The caption read, "Great night catching up with old friends from college." But in the background of the photo, barely visible, was Coach Dalton. So they knew each other from college, Noah said. They weren't just co-workers, they have history. That changed things. That changed everything. If they had history, the argument in the parking lot might not have been about school at all. It might have been personal. I need to talk to Ms. Harrison, I said. She's the only one who knows what really happened. Noah looked at me like I was crazy. Dude, she's in the hospital, and she thinks you're the one who hit her. You can't just walk in there. Then I need to find another way to talk to her, to make her understand I didn't do this. But before I could figure out how, my phone rang. Patricia Yun. Ethan, the DA filed charges this morning. We need to come in this afternoon for booking. I'll meet you at the station at 3 p.m. Bring your mother. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. Okay. Ethan, listen to me. This is going to be scary. But remember, being charged is not the same as being convicted. We have a strong defense. We have reasonable doubt. We're going to fight this. I hung up and looked at Noah. They filed charges. I'm turning myself in at 3. Noah's face went pale. Oh my God, this is really happening. The rest of the school day passed in a blur. I went through the motions of attending class, but I wasn't really there. My mind was somewhere else entirely, imagining what booking would be like. Fingerprints and mugshots and being put in a cell. At 2:30, I left school and my mom picked me up. We drove to the police station in silence. Patricia Yun was waiting outside, professional and composed in a navy blue suit. Are you ready? She asked. I nodded, even though I wasn't. We walked inside together. The booking process was exactly as dehumanizing as I'd feared. They took my fingerprints again, my photo, my personal belongings. They read me my rights and filed the official charges. Assault with a deadly weapon, a vehicle, leaving the scene of an accident, and reckless endangerment. Felonies, all of them. Patricia argued for bail at the hearing, presenting my clean record, my ties to the community, my status as a minor. The judge set bail at $50,000. My mom somehow managed to scrape together the 10% needed for a bail bond, and by 7 p.m., I was released. We drove home in the dark, and I felt like a different person than I'd been that morning. I was officially a criminal defendant now, out on bail, awaiting trial, facing years in prison if convicted. When we got home, there was a car in our driveway I didn't recognize. My mom parked on the street and we walked up cautiously. A woman was sitting on our front porch. As we got closer, I recognized her. Ms. Harrison. She was in a wheelchair, her leg in a cast, her face bruised, but healing. She looked up as we approached. Mrs. Burke? Ethan? I need to talk to you about what really happened that night. My mom and I exchanged shocked glances. Patricia had warned us not to talk to Ms. Harrison without legal counsel present, but she was here, on our porch, saying she wanted to talk. Ms. Harrison, my mom said carefully, maybe we should call my son's lawyer. Please, Ms. Harrison interrupted. I know what I told the police, but I've been thinking about it, going over it in my mind, and something isn't right. The person who hit me, I told them it was too dark to see clearly, but that wasn't entirely true. I saw enough, and the more I think about it, the more I'm sure it wasn't Ethan. My heart leapt into my throat. What do you mean? Can we go inside? I'll explain everything. We helped Ms. Harrison navigate her wheelchair into our house and to the living room. She looked exhausted, like this trip had taken everything out of her. My mom offered her water, which she accepted gratefully. When we were all seated, Ms. Harrison took a deep breath. That night in the parking lot, I wasn't there by accident. Someone had texted me asking to meet. They said it was urgent, about a student. I thought it was another teacher, someone I trusted. When I got there at 8 p.m., I was waiting by my car when I heard an engine. I turned and saw headlights coming at me fast. I barely had time to move. The car hit me on my left side and kept going. Did you see the driver? My mom asked. Not clearly. The headlights were bright, and I was focused on getting out of the way. But I saw the silhouette, and I saw something else. After I hit the ground, before I blacked out, I saw the car circle back. The driver got out for just a second, long enough to look at me. They were wearing a dark hoodie pulled up, but I saw their build, their height. It was someone tall, over 6 feet. Ethan, you're what, 5'9"? 5'10", I said quietly. Right. The person I saw was taller, bigger. When the police showed me Ethan's photo and said his car was the one that hit me, I was confused, because it didn't match what I'd seen. But I was drugged up on pain meds, and I thought maybe I was remembering wrong. Maybe the trauma had distorted my memory. She paused. But then I saw something today that made me certain. I saw Coach Dalton in the hospital hallway. He was visiting another teacher. When I saw him, something clicked. His height, his build. That's who was driving the car. I'm almost certain of it. Coach Dalton? My mom breathed. But why? Ms. Harrison's expression hardened. Because I threatened to report him. 3 weeks ago, I caught him having an inappropriate relationship with a student, a female student from his gym class. I saw them together in his office after hours, the door locked. The way they were standing, the way he was touching her arm. It was wrong. I confronted him immediately. Told him I was going to report it to Principal Winters and the school board. What did he say? I asked. He begged me not to. Said it wasn't what it looked like, that they were just talking, that I was misunderstanding the situation. But I know what I saw. I told him I'd give him 24 hours to report himself, or I would do it for him. She closed her eyes. That's when things got ugly. He threatened me. Said if I reported him, he'd make sure I lost my job too. That he'd accuse me of falsifying grades or having my own inappropriate relationships. I didn't take the threat seriously. I thought it was just panic talking. But 3 weeks went by, and I hadn't reported him yet because I was gathering evidence, making sure I had enough to make the accusation stick. Maybe he found out I was still investigating. Maybe he decided to stop me permanently. The pieces were falling into place. Coach Dalton had a motive. He had a reason to want Ms. Harrison silenced. But how did he get Ethan's car? My mom asked. Ms. Harrison shook her head. I don't know. That's the part I can't figure out. Unless... Does Coach Dalton know where you live? I thought about it. I don't think so. I've never told him my address, but it would be in the school records. Teachers have access to student information, including addresses. So he could have looked it up, my mom said. Driven by your house, seen the car in the driveway, seen that it matched the description he needed, then came back that night to use it. I stood up, my mind racing. We need to tell the police. Right now. But Ms. Harrison held up a hand. I already did. I called Sergeant Matthews before I came here and told him everything. He's opening a new investigation into Coach Dalton. But Ethan, you need to know something. This isn't going to be easy. Coach Dalton is respected. He's been at this school for 15 years. He has friends in the district office. And right now, all the physical evidence still points to you. My testimony helps, but it's not conclusive. We need more proof. What kind of proof? We need to find evidence that Coach Dalton had access to your car. Fingerprints, DNA, something that places him in that vehicle. Or we need to find the student he was involved with and get her to come forward. But that's going to be hard. She's scared, and she probably has no idea he tried to kill me to keep the secret. I felt anger rising in my chest, not just at being falsely accused, but at the whole situation. A teacher preying on a student trying to kill someone to cover it up, and me caught in the middle. Who's the student? I asked. I don't know her name. I only saw her once, and it was from behind. Dark hair, average height, wearing gym clothes. It could be any of dozens of girls in his classes. That wasn't much to go on, but it was something. Over the next 2 days, everything accelerated. Sergeant Matthews brought Coach Dalton in for questioning. According to Patricia, who had sources in the police department, Coach maintained his innocence. He had an alibi for the night of the assault. He claimed he was at home with his wife. His wife confirmed this, but Ms. Harrison's testimony was enough to get a warrant to search Coach Dalton's house and car. They found nothing connecting him to my vehicle. No spare keys, no evidence he'd been in my car, but they did find something else. In Coach Dalton's home office, they found a burner phone. The phone had texts on it from an unknown number. The texts were flirtatious, inappropriate, clearly between a teacher and student. The police traced the unknown number. It belonged to a girl named Alyssa Kent, a junior in Coach Dalton's third-period gym class. When confronted by police with her parents present, Alyssa broke down. She confirmed the relationship had been going on for 3 months. Coach had convinced her it was love, that they just had to keep it secret until she turned 18. She had no idea he was married. She had no idea he'd been manipulating her. Patricia called me with the news. The DA is dropping the charges against you. Coach Dalton is being arrested for the assault on Ms. Harrison and for the inappropriate relationship with Alyssa. It's over, Ethan. You're clear. I should have felt relief. I should have felt vindicated. But all I felt was empty. The charges were dropped, yes. But everyone at school had already decided I was guilty. My reputation was destroyed. There's more, Patricia said. The police did another forensic sweep of your car with this new information. They found a partial fingerprint on the steering wheel that they'd initially dismissed because it was smudged. With Coach Dalton's fingerprints on file now, they matched it to him. He was in your car. They can prove it. Now the relief came, washing over me in a wave that made my knees weak. They could prove it. Not just testimony, not just circumstantial evidence, but physical proof that Coach Dalton had been in my car. How did he get in? I asked. How did he take the car without anyone noticing? The police are still piecing that together, but their current theory is that Coach Dalton came to your house in the middle of the night, took your mother's spare key from inside, drove your car to school, carried out the assault, then returned the car and the key before morning. Your side door not being locked made it possible. It was a violation that made my skin crawl. A stranger walking through our house while we slept, taking our property, using it to commit a violent crime. What about his wife's alibi? She's recanted. Under pressure from the police, she admitted she'd lied to protect him. He wasn't home that night. She woke up around midnight and he was gone, didn't come back until almost 2 a.m. When the police came asking questions, he told her to say he'd been home all night. The news spread through school like wildfire. Coach Dalton arrested, charges against me dropped, Ms. Harrison recovering and preparing to testify. Alyssa Kent transferred to another school, and her parents filed a lawsuit against the district. When I went back to school the next week, it was different. People actually apologized to me. Not everyone, but enough. Noah met me at my locker with a huge grin. Dude, I knew you didn't do it. I always knew. I gave him a weak smile. Thanks for sticking by me. The day felt surreal. Teachers treated me with a weird mix of sympathy and guilt. Students who'd avoided me now wanted to hear the whole story. I just wanted everything to go back to normal, but I was starting to realize that normal was gone. This experience had changed me in ways I was still figuring out. At lunch, I sat in the cafeteria and thought about everything that had happened. About how quickly people had been willing to believe I was guilty. About how a single piece of evidence, my car at the scene, had been enough to convince everyone I was capable of attempted murder. About how close I'd come to being convicted of a crime I didn't commit. Ms. Harrison came back to school 2 weeks later, still in a wheelchair, but determined to finish the school year. She found me in the hallway between classes. Ethan, I wanted to thank you for not giving up, for pushing back even when everyone thought you were guilty. You're the one who saved me, I said. If you hadn't come forward, if you hadn't told the truth about what you really saw. We saved each other, she said. You figured out the connection to Coach Dalton. I just confirmed what you already suspected. She handed me a piece of paper. I wrote this for you. A character reference for your college applications. I know this experience has probably set you back academically, and I wanted to help however I could. I took the letter, overwhelmed. Thank you. She wheeled away, and I stood there holding the letter, feeling grateful and angry and exhausted all at once. The trial for Coach Dalton was set for 6 months later. Patricia said I'd have to testify, as would Ms. Harrison and Alyssa and probably a dozen other people. It would be long and difficult and would bring everything back up again. But I'd do it. Because justice mattered. Because the truth mattered. Because no one else should have to go through what I'd been through. That afternoon, I drove home in my car, which had been returned to me after the forensics team finished with it. It felt different now, tainted by what had happened. My mom had offered to trade cars with me, to let me drive hers so I wouldn't have to be in the vehicle that had been used in the assault. But I'd refused. This was my car. I wasn't going to let Coach Dalton take that from me, too. When I pulled into the driveway, I sat there for a moment, just breathing. Chloe came out of the house and knocked on my window. I rolled it down. You okay? She asked. Yeah, I'm okay. Mom made your favorite dinner, lasagna. I'll be in a minute. Chloe nodded and went back, inside. I sat there a moment longer, then got out of the car and locked it, made sure it was locked. My mom had since installed a security system on the house, cameras, motion sensors, locks on every door. We'd never be that careless again. Inside, the smell of lasagna filled the house. My mom was setting the table, and Chloe was pouring drinks, Normal family dinner, normal life. Except nothing was normal anymore, and maybe it never would be again. But we were trying. That night, after dinner, I went up to my room and opened my laptop. I started writing everything down, every detail of what had happened. The fear, the confusion, the anger, the vindication. I wanted to remember it all, but more than that, I wanted other people to know. To understand how easily someone's life could be destroyed by false accusations, how the justice system could fail, how important it was to keep fighting even when everything seemed hopeless. 3 months later, Coach Dalton pleaded guilty to all charges, in exchange for a reduced sentence. 25 years in prison, eligible for parole in 15. Alyssa gave a victim impact statement that brought the entire courtroom to tears. Ms. Harrison spoke about the lasting trauma of the assault, and I spoke about being falsely accused, about the presumption of guilt that had nearly destroyed my life. The judge, a stern woman named Victoria Brennan, looked at Coach Dalton with disgust as she handed down the sentence. You were entrusted with the care and education of children. Instead, you preyed on them, manipulated them, and when someone tried to stop you, you attempted to murder them, and you tried to frame an innocent student for your crime. There is no redemption for what you've done. Coach Dalton was led away in handcuffs. I watched him go and felt nothing but relief. It was over. Really over. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. Patricia had prepared me for this, had told me what to say and what not to say. I kept it simple. I'm grateful that the truth came out. I'm grateful to Ms. Harrison for her courage. And I hope this serves as a reminder that we need to believe victims and investigate thoroughly before rushing to judgment. The cameras flashed and the questions kept coming, but Patricia guided me away. My mom's arm was around my shoulders, and Chloe was on my other side. We walked to the parking lot together, a family that had been through hell and come out the other side. That night, I got a text from Noah. You did it, man. You actually did it. Justice served. I smiled and typed back. We did it. Couldn't have done it without you. Drinks to celebrate, smoothies, whatever. Tomorrow, tonight, I just want to sleep. And I did. For the first time in months, I slept through the entire night without nightmares, without waking up in a panic thinking I heard someone in the house, without the crushing weight of false accusations pressing down on my chest. I slept like someone who'd been vindicated. Like someone who'd fought and won. 6 months later, I graduated high school. I'd been accepted to 3 universities despite everything that had happened. I chose one 4 hours away, far enough to feel like a fresh start, but close enough to come home when I needed to. At graduation, Ms. Harrison was there in the crowd, out of her wheelchair now but walking with a cane. She caught my eye as I walked across the stage and gave me a nod. I nodded back, understanding passing between us. We were survivors. Both of us. My mom cried through the entire ceremony. Chloe recorded it on her phone. And when I walked off that stage with my diploma, I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Hope. That fall, I started college. I joined the Criminal Justice Club and started volunteering with an innocence project that helped exonerate wrongly convicted prisoners. I wanted to use what I'd been through to help others, to make sure that what happened to me didn't happen to anyone else. 3 years later, I was sitting in a law school admissions interview when the interviewer asked me why I wanted to become a lawyer. I told them the truth, about Coach Dalton, about the false accusations, about nearly being convicted for a crime I didn't commit, about learning firsthand how fragile justice could be and how important it was to fight for it. That experience taught me that the system isn't perfect, I said, but it also taught me that the truth matters. Evidence matters. Fighting for what's right matters. And that's why I want to be a defense attorney, to fight for people who can't fight for themselves, to make sure everyone gets the presumption of innocence they deserve. The interviewer nodded slowly. That's quite a story. It's my story, and it's why I'm here. 2 months later, I got my acceptance letter. I called my mom first, then Noah, then Ms. Harrison. She was teaching at a different school now, had moved districts to get away from the memories. But she'd stayed, in touch, checking in on me every few months. I'm so proud of you, Ethan, she said when I told her about law school. You took something terrible and turned it into purpose. That takes real strength. I learned from the best, I told her. You stood up when it mattered most. You told the truth even though it was hard. That's the kind of courage I want to have. We talked for a while longer, catching up on life. When we hung up, I sat on my dorm room bed feeling grateful. Grateful for my mom who'd never doubted me. For Chloe, who'd been my witness. For Noah, who'd stood by me. For Patricia, who'd fought for me. For Ms. Harrison, who'd told the truth. And even, in a strange way, grateful for the experience itself. Because it had shown me what I wanted to do with my life. It had given me purpose. Years later, when I was a practicing attorney, I took on a case of a teenage boy falsely accused of assault. The evidence against him was circumstantial, the police work was sloppy, and everyone had already decided he was guilty. When I met him for the first time, I saw the fear in his eyes, the confusion, the desperation. I saw myself, and I told him the same thing Patricia had told me years ago. Being charged is not the same as being convicted. We have reasonable doubt. We're going to fight this. We did fight, and we won. After the verdict, the boy's mother hugged me with tears streaming down her face. Thank you. Thank you for believing him. I know what it's like, I said. I've been where he is, and I made a promise to myself that I'd help others in the same situation. That night, I went home to my apartment and thought about Coach Dalton, who was still in prison and would be for many more years. About how one person's crimes had rippled out and affected so many lives. Mine, Alyssa's, Ms. Harrison's, my family's, his own family's. But also about how the truth had won in the end. How justice, imperfect as it was, had eventually prevailed. I opened my laptop and started writing. Not the kind of writing I'd done in law school, but the story I'd started years ago in my childhood bedroom. The story of what really happened that day when Coach Dalton blew his whistle and shouted, "Who drives a black sedan to school?" It was time to tell it, all of it. And maybe, just maybe, it would help someone else who found themselves in an impossible situation. Someone who needed to know that even when everyone thinks you're guilty, even when all the evidence points to you, the truth can still win. You just have to keep fighting for it. If you enjoyed this, you'll definitely want to see the next ones too. So, subscribe now and let me know your take in the comments.